Where do humans come from? The origin of humanity from a religious perspective. Welcome back, everyone, to Mind Podcast. Where do humans come from? Let's take a trip back to our childhood, to those middle school days when we first heard from our literature teacher that humans originated from the legend of Adam and Eve. Almost everyone has heard this story. In summary, God created the first man, Adam, and then created the woman, Eve, to keep Adam company. Then one day, a serpent tempted them to eat the forbidden fruit from the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. After eating it, they became aware of their nakedness, developed lust, and left the Garden of Eden, eventually giving birth to 3 children. Another version of the story suggests that eating the fruit caused it to get stuck in their throats, leading to the Adam's apple in men. Yes, this is the origin of humanity that many of us have been told since childhood. The versions found in Islamic, Christian, or Jewish scriptures are quite similar. If we look further into the creation theory of Christianity through the book of Genesis, we find that it begins with, "In the beginning God created the heavens and the earth. The earth was formless and empty. Darkness was over the surface of the deep, and the Spirit of God was hovering over the waters. On the first day God created light, separating it from the darkness, calling the light day, and the darkness night. On the second day, God created the sky and the land, and separated the seas. On the third day God created vegetation and plants. On the fourth day God created the stars and separated day and night. On the fifth day God created living creatures in the water and on land, including livestock and wild animals. On the sixth day God created man in his own image, male and female, and blessed them. Be fruitful and increase in number. Fill the earth and subdue it. Rule over the fish in the sea and the birds in the sky, and over every living creature that moves on the ground. God saw all that he had made, and it was very good." The vast majority of theistic religions around the world have similar explanations, that a god or supernatural being created humans and the universe. For example, in Hinduism, Brahma, the supreme creator, is believed to have created the world. Zoroastrianism speaks of 2 creators, the good spirit and the evil spirit, who created the world and all living beings. Islam, like Christianity, also attributes the creation of all things to God, the supreme creator. The reason why many philosophers attribute the creation of the universe to a supernatural being is simply that they could not explain it otherwise. They were heavily influenced by ancient Christian thought, which attributed anything inexplicable to God. If you pay attention, you'll notice that many Western philosophers during the height of the Roman Empire were given titles like saint or saint, such as Saint Augustine, Saint Thomas, and Saint Paul, indicating their alignment with Christian thought. However, after the decline of Christian power, Western philosophers began to think more freely, though many had to sacrifice their lives because of the rigid dogmatism of Christianity. A typical example is Galileo, who stood before the Inquisition and was condemned for proving the heliocentric theory, that the sun is the center and the earth revolves around it, contrary to the biblical claim that the sun revolves around the earth. Then there was the belief that the earth was flat rather than round. What happened? Eventually, even the Vatican had to acknowledge its mistake and amend the teachings in the Bible. Science advanced beyond biblical teachings, and as it progressed, its findings increasingly contradicted the Bible. One clear example is Darwin's theory of evolution, a groundbreaking theory in 19th century science, suggesting that humans share a common ancestor with apes. For instance, when comparing the thoughts from 2 great civilizations of humanity, with India representing the East through Brahmanic thought, and Europe representing the West through Christianity, both ancient and modern philosophers tried to trace the origins of humankind with explanations full of religious, superstitious, astronomical, scientific, and philosophical elements. Who knows? Maybe someday someone will boldly stand up and prove that humans originated from a different source, such as the cosmic Buddha as described in Buddhist cosmology. Returning to Buddhism, if we had not studied the teachings of the Buddha, many of us might still believe that humans were created by a foreign figure named Adam, as mentioned in the Bible. Or perhaps we would have fallen into the superstitions of Western science. Let's imagine ourselves as scientists or sociologists as we examine the content of the Aganya Sutta. not as Buddhists, but as seekers of knowledge to compare it with the theories humanity currently celebrates. First, the Buddha briefly describes the cycles of the formation and dissolution of the universe in accordance with the law of formation, existence, decay, and destruction. He emphasizes that during the phase of the Earth's decay and destruction, the remaining beings were reborn in the Abhasara Brahma world. At this point, it's important to note that the Abhasara Brahma world is the 6th of the 16 realms in the form realm, which is where beings who have attained the second jhana reside. Thus, during the world's destruction, the virtuous beings inhabit this realm, while the malicious beings are nowhere to be found. The Buddha only briefly summarizes this stage. After the destruction, after a long period, the earth begins to form again as dust and water gather. Initially, the earth was pitch black, submerged in water, and over a long period, beings from the Abhasara Brahma world were reborn on this earth. At that time, they still lived on joy, radiated their own light, and moved through space as they did in the Brahma world. As the earth gradually formed, a certain flavor began to emerge on the water's surface, forming a white froth like the scum of boiled rice, sweet like pure honey. Some beings from the Abhasara Brahma world wanted to taste this flavor, so they dipped their fingers and tasted it, which gave rise to craving and attachment, causing their radiant light to fade away. As their light faded, the sun and moon appeared. When the sun and moon appeared, the stars and constellations emerged. When the stars and constellations appeared, day and night became apparent. When day and night became apparent, months and years emerged. As time passed, they consumed more of this earth's froth. Their bodies became coarser, and their physical forms began to differ. Among them, some were beautiful while others were unattractive. Seeing this, they became arrogant, envious, and judgmental, praising themselves for being beautiful and criticizing others for being unattractive. Due to this arrogance, the frothy earth food disappeared, and they became sad and lamented. Another type of food appeared, white fungus. The next replacement was a type of white earth clump resembling water spinach stems, followed by rice that grew in clusters without husks or bran. As beings developed unwholesome thoughts of greed and arrogance about the food and their physical forms, the previous food disappeared and was replaced by food of lower quality. Along with the description of the earth's formation, the Buddha shows the progression of the being's consciousness and morality, which gradually degraded. First, there was arrogance, with beings praising themselves and criticizing others based on physical beauty and skin color. After consuming wheat for some time, gender differences appeared, and attraction between males and females arose. When they engaged in sexual relations, they were scorned and ridiculed by others, forcing them to hide, build houses to conceal their activities, and thus family life emerged. Some lazy beings began hoarding wheat for several days to avoid searching for food daily, leading to the division of land for harvesting. This was the beginning of private property. Then, theft began as lazy beings stole wheat from others. People began appointing leaders to deal with theft, resolve disputes, and punish wrongdoers, compensating the leaders with portions of the wheat harvest. This was how the ruling class and government systems emerged, and society continued to shape its class systems, species, and identities. Some beings, frightened by these immoral behaviors, retreated into the forest to practice meditation. Those unable to meditate wrote scriptures. These individuals were called Brahmin hermits. Most people who enjoyed sexual activities lived separately in houses and engaged in commerce and trade. These people were called laborers and merchants. The rest, who had evil hearts and engaged in harmful activities, were called slaves. Finally, the Buddha clarified the standards of morality, human rights, and equality without distinctions of race or skin color, and emphasized that these standards should be based on the practice of the true Dharma, purifying body and mind rather than on class or skin color. He taught that regardless of whether one is a king, a monk, a commoner, or a slave, if they commit evil, they are equally bad, and if they do good, they equally enjoy the fruits of peace. But due to ignorance, greed, and arrogance, beings develop discrimination, create differences, and harm and oppress one another, leading to the decline of moral standards in both individuals and society. Through the brief content of the Aganya Sutta above, we see that the description of the destruction and formation of the earth or the universe in Buddhism is not attributed to any god or deity, but is a long process that takes place over time. When compared to the Big Bang theory of modern science, it closely resembles the stages of disintegration into dust, the presence of water, the accumulation of matter, the emergence of darkness and light, the rising and falling of the Earth's surface, and the formation of food cells from water. In terms of the social and political life system, this is clearly illustrated through the moral and behavioral changes of beings. When compared to Darwin's theory of evolution, which states that life is a process of natural selection, the origin of humanity in this sutta aligns very well. They gradually adapted to different types of food to survive and evolved. Darwin's idea that humans share a common ancestor with apes does not mean that humans originated from apes and vice versa. Beings grow and develop through their own natural selection process. When comparing the Buddhist worldview on the origin of humanity with that of other religions worldwide, the difference is clear. It's as different as night and day, as demonstrated by the examples above. Some religious teachings have had to be revised to align with scientific findings, while Buddhist teachings are still being explored and confirmed by science. The more science delves into these teachings, the more it verifies the accuracy of the Buddha's words. More than 2 centuries ago, the great scientist Einstein affirmed that the religion of the future will be a cosmic religion. It should transcend a personal God and avoid dogmas and theology. Covering both the natural and the spiritual, it should be based on a religious sense arising from the experience of all things, natural and spiritual, as a meaningful unity. Buddhism answers this description. This shows the simplicity and the profound truth of the Buddha's teachings. Buddhism is a non-theistic religion. Compared to theistic religions, Buddhism is a rare species in need of protection, if not a minority. This emphasizes how rare it is to find a religion that promotes self-power beyond the dominion of a god, or a religious leader with such deep and truthful insight that modern science has yet to fully grasp. It is rare to find an educator or sociologist who can clearly explain the system of human social ethics from its origin to the present as the Buddha did. He could answer simply and realistically that humans are born from their mother's womb, and he could also explain the origin of humans in a way that is both supernatural and non-theistic, both beyond conceptual thought and practically exemplified in life without the need for a telescope or archaeological tool. However, being the master of all doctrines, the Buddha summarized everything into one truth so that the listener could experience the reality, let go of delusion, arrogance, and craving. Just as Einstein's idea of a unified whole is to understand oneself fully by observing the universe. At that point, the question of where humans come from, whether from this planet or another, becomes irrelevant. What matters is the present moment, how our thoughts and actions impact the world around us. We will face, feel, and respond to nature as it is. And that, dear audience, is the content for today. May you and your family always be safe and happy.